I'm Lauren, and I'm doing the pros and cons over gun control. So going to my first slide, United States gun facts. So this is just a few facts that I have found. So in the U.S., they have about 393 million guns, which is the highest whole per capita number in the world. Guns are deeply ingrained in American society and the nation's political debates. The Second Amendment in the U.S. Constitution gives Americans the right to bear arms. And handguns are the most common among gun owners. So pros of gun control. Irresponsible gun behavior. Guns can get into the wrong hands. Children do not fully understand the dangers of guns. Accounting for 15% of children's fatalities, guns are the second leading cause of children's death. More risk of violence. People carrying a gun for self-defense were 4.5 times more likely to be shot during an assault than those without guns. Meaning firearms might not be the best form of self-defense. In these sort of situations, sometimes they might instigate the situation by having a gun, and so it might cause people to use their guns even more. Armed criminals are another point. Guns are often stolen or misplaced. The owner becomes responsible if they do not alert authorities. So I currently work in property management, and this is something that happens frequently. A lot of residents tend to leave their cars unlocked, or if by chance their car gets broken into. The first thing I tell them to do is to alert the police. They have to know this, because if your gun was stolen and it's still registered underneath you and it hasn't been listed as stolen, it could bring the crime of whatever was committed with it back to you. So it's really important to make sure that is something that is done beforehand. More pros of gun control. Dangers to oneself. The risk of self-injury while handling a firearm can be dangerous. There were 39 deaths in 2019 in the U.S., and 3% of those were unintentional. So these were deaths that could have been preventable, and it's just something that was an accident that may have occurred. Women's protection. Women's risk of being murdered by a gun increases to 500% when a gun is present during a domestic dispute. In the U.S., women are 11.4 times more likely to be victims of gun homicide. I'm sorry, not more likely, just likely to be victims of gun homicide. Lack of gun knowledge. Majority of adults, including owners, prefer common sense of gun control. Background checks are essential in gun ownership, and unfortunately, 40% of gun sales go undisclosed, preventing these proper background checks and waiting periods. Another pro of gun control, high suicide rate. Guns account for 54% of suicides. It is shown that the access to guns raises the suicide rate. These deaths can be preventable with the lack of guns around. Cons of gun control. So the Holocaust would have been greatly diminished if Jews were armed. The first thing Hitler implemented is confiscating of weapons. This is one of the biggest tragedies in history. Dictators tend to take people's guns or weapons first. No drop in crime. Study shows that the state with higher restrictions on carrying concealed weapons had higher gun-related murders, and states with higher increases in gun ownership had the largest drop of crimes. More cons of gun ownership. Gun control does not impact criminals. Out of 69 of the U.S. mass shooters, 49 of them have guns illegally. Guns will always find their way into the wrong hands. Criminals will always find a way to obtain guns, whether it is stealing guns, importing guns illegally, or simply getting a gun from a friend or family member. Fewer guns do not eliminate gun violence or change the heart of criminals. There are alternative weapons used in crimes such as knives, vehicle attacks, physical attacks, or bombs. This being said, violence or criminals, deaths, doesn't completely stop or be eliminated. There's other ways, and of course a criminal will find a way. If there were a domestic dispute, the male or female would become physical, or if it were a vehicle situation, someone can easily use their vehicle to harm someone. And if it's something that they wanted to do, like a mass shooting, if they didn't have access to a gun, sometimes they will use bombs. So fewer guns don't eliminate gun violence, or violence, I should say. Majority of guns-related deaths are from suicide. Although very sad, homicides were not the leading cause of death due by guns. Out of the 10,000 plus firearm-related deaths that occur every year in the United States, more than 7,000 of them are suicides. It won't change the value of a human life. Gun violence occurs when there is a lack of value of human life. Some might say violence is a mind or a heart problem. There is a bigger issue when somebody wants to end someone else's life. So that being the end, my conclusion for the debate is there are obviously some really important pros and really important cons. But to me, I think it is important to own a gun. I think that there is a lack of education. I don't think we should restrict guns. I think we should educate more. There is a deeper problem with suicides. Suicides are the leading cause of death with a gun. A gun does not eliminate suicide. There are many other ways people have committed suicide, and it does not change the fact of what that person is going through. There's a bigger and deeper problem within that person that needs to be focused on, and it's not taking away a weapon, but figuring out what's going with them emotionally. Same thing with criminals. Criminals don't fully understand or value the human life. It might be something that they have grown or only known is to not value others. Maybe they weren't valued as a child, maybe they're lacking an understanding of human life, or even themselves. It's a deeper rooted problem that won't be handled by taking away their gun. It would be handled by giving them the proper care and education that they're needing, proper understanding and value of human life. There are many cases in history that shows that dictatorship has deeply impacted by de-weaponizing people. One being, of course, the Jews. It's one of the first things Hitler did was take away. It's one of all dictators tend to do is take away weapons. Another thing to focus on too is slave ownership. Slaves did not have weapons. They were not allowed or permitted to have weapons. It was another form of control. It was another way of controlling them, and it's also, I believe, this is why I believe it should be a human right to own a gun, but I do believe that there are proper measures in getting a gun. I believe there should be thorough background checks. I believe there should be a waiting period. I believe there should be education. My mom told me when she was in high school, which was really surprising, when she was in high school, that they had a shooting range in her high school. So she was able to shoot a shotgun, and they would practice on one of those circle things, the dot in the middle, and they would do practice rounds. And she said it was one of the relaxing things for her, and that was crazy to me. I'm like, what? Having a gun in high school? And she's like, it wasn't hers. It was almost like a PE class. It was another elective. And I'm like, well, it does teach people and youth how to properly use guns, and that it's not meant to be something to be scared of. I think we should educate younger children too as well about guns and the dangers. I think there should be proper education enforced about guns. I think there should be more out there for people who are dealing with suicide. I think there should also be more out there for criminals. I do truly believe that there is something that they're lacking, and it's not the fact that they have a gun, it's the fact that there's something in them that needs to be changed, or some help that they deeply need. I do believe that we should all have the protection to protect ourselves, because crime is inevitable. Wherever you are at, it will come. You just have to, of course, be careful and alert to avoid all such crime. The thing is, some things happen and you can't control the inevitable. So that would be my final breakthrough. Oh my goodness, I'm almost at 10 minutes. I'm so sorry. But yeah, thank you.